Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. This is Mike Dell's World number 433 for Thanksgiving 2025. I guess it's officially the 27th. And today, first off, I want to say a happy Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving in the United States, so hopefully you find some good food somewhere and some good family camaraderie and whatnot. This is going to be kind of a rough one for us in some ways because it's the first Thanksgiving without my dad, who passed away a couple weeks after Thanksgiving last year. So, yeah. So we're going to leave an empty chair at the table for him, and kind of rough around the edges, but what I wanted to talk about today is how Traverse City still has the feeling of a small town. And I kind of preface that with saying, sort of. We've had a couple of interesting crimes around here lately. I'm sure maybe you didn't, maybe you did. But we had a big stabbing incident at the Walmart here in Traverse City this summer. And just here last week or so, we had a murder. And, a couple of kids were breaking into cars. And anyway, they shot a parking deck worker. And, of course, when I say the word parking deck, that also sort of denotes that, well, Traverse City isn't that small anymore. But I'll get to that. And also just yesterday, I think it was, or maybe the day before, over at the Meyer gas station, somebody tried to abduct a woman, and, he got stopped. But still, that kind of stuff normally doesn't happen here. And when it does, it's definitely a big deal. So I guess that puts it in the realm of small town. But, Traverse City still has that small town feel sometimes. Around Cherry Festival, it's definitely not. Let me give you some statistics. Traverse City, the actual city of Traverse City, which, encompasses, downtown and a few neighborhoods around. So it's not, physically too small. But, in the 2020 census, we were just shy of 16,000 people living in the city of Traverse City. Now, the metropolitan area, which covers about 4 counties, I believe they count Grand Traverse County, which is Traverse City, Leelanau County, Benzie County, and I believe it's Kalkaska County that they also count. And that's at 153,500, something like that. And so, think of a small city with 100 and some odd thousand people, but only 15,000 and 16,000 in the city limits. I'm just outside the city limits, and literally I'm a half a block away from the airport property, which is considered city, and about a half a mile to the west of me is considered the city limits. So I'm in what's called East Bay Township, and it's a metropolitan township. It's not really rural. I mean, parts of it are, of course, but where I'm at, it's not. I'm on a double city lot in the woods, so it seems sort of rural, but again, not really, because I'm half mile from the airport, so you get airplanes, helicopters. I get I'm not that far from the bay, so I get that traffic. And I'm on a 5-lane road. So, not exactly. Oh, and there's a train track going through, but not a lot of trains, half a block away. So, I get it. I'm not really in the country, not really in the city, but, I consider myself part of Traverse City, and my address is Traverse City. But Traverse City does have kind of a small town feel to it still. And that's, something that it's going to take a while to go away, if it ever does go away. There's some distinct neighborhoods. Of course, there's the downtown district, which I talked all about in 2 episodes in this month. And then there's the Traverse Heights area, which is kind of on the east side of Boardman Lake, from US 31 out to South Airport Road, I guess would be considered the Heights. There's the Old Town District along Union Street, and there's what they call it, the Central Neighborhoods, which is on the west side of downtown, west and a little bit south of downtown. And then, there's a couple other areas, Graylickville, which is actually in Leelanau County, but part of Traverse City, at least the little part of Graylickville. And on the east side, there's Acme, which has its own zip code, and all that, but I consider that part of the city. And then there's what we call the Miracle Mile, which is about 3 or 4 miles of hotels and all touristy stuff along the bay. Hotels, restaurants, motels, you name it. It's just a big long stretch of that kind of thing. But you go somewhere here in the wintertime, and there is some winter tourism now, not as much as in the summer, obviously, but there is some winter tourism. Here, snowmobilers come up here, skiers come up here, cross-country skiers. There's a lot to do. Ice fishermen, all that. There's stuff to do here in the winter. But, I can walk into a bar downtown, right downtown, walk into Union Street Station or Sledder's or, whatever bar. And, it's the typical small town sort of feel to it. Whereas, in the summertime, it's a lot of tourists. Of course, there's a lot of locals around too in the summer, of course. But, I don't know. It just feels still like a small town. We have, I guess, officially 4 high schools. We got the Catholic schools, they have a high school, and then there's 3 public schools. There's Central, West, and then there's one just called Traverse City High School, which was kind of the alternative school, but they're the closest one to me, just literally up the street here, the home of the Mavericks. But they're a small, niche school, but it's a public school. And then we got the 2 main high schools, the Trojans and the Titans. When I was going to school, there was just one. The Catholic school, it's still been around, but, it was just one, Traverse City Senior High School, which turned into Central. And then they built one out west of town, kind of out by my folks' place, in Long Lake Township. Well, actually, it's in Garfield Township, but it's in the Long Lake area on North Long Lake Road. And that school was built around the same time as the Columbine shootings there in Colorado. I'm sure you guys remember that, or maybe you don't, but whenever they were showing aerial shots of the Columbine High School, it looks exactly like Traverse City West. That building is, I think the same guy designed it or something, because every time I saw that on TV, I said, that looks like West, which, like I said, was under construction or just done, and they, hadn't started having classes in there at the time, but, it's a very prominent building going along North Long Lake Road, so it was easy to see the resemblance of the buildings. But, the old Central High School downtown, it's at the base of the peninsula. It's still more or less in the same configuration it was back when I went to school. One thing interesting about Traverse City schools, both the West, what we call junior high, now they call it West Middle School, and the one Central School, that's, back then was senior high, they had separate buildings, and you had to go between the buildings, and they had covered walkways, but, something like that should not be in an area where it snows and it gets really cold, because you had to go out into the weather to, switch classes, and now they've connected all the buildings together. They've enclosed those walkways and built buildings kind of in between buildings. And, so it's configured a little different. The layout's the same. But, and I understand they're tearing down the original gym at the Central High School, if they haven't already, and they're remodeling and putting in a new gym and all that. And it was, well overdue. I mean, my folks went to that school in the 60s, early 60s, and, it hadn't really changed a whole lot in the 80s when I went, and now it's, they are changing it up again a little bit, but, it still kind of has that old, that small town feel to it. The school anyway does, or did, maybe not now, I don't know. One thing of interest that's completely not about Traverse City being a small town, but whenever I'm flying and I use runway 18, I turn my base to final turn pretty much right over that high school. That's kind of kind of a landmark there when you turn base to final on 18 in Traverse City. But I digress. Let's see what else kind of gives it that small town feel. There is not a lot of paid parking around Traverse City. Now, in Traverse City, downtown especially, there's always been parking meters. As long as I can remember when I was a kid, I had to feed the meter, so, right downtown there was parking meters, and nowadays the parking meters are all digital and you got to have an app on your phone and you pay that way. I think the ones right on Front Street, though, still take coins, maybe on State Street, the kind of the two main drags downtown. And, and then there's parking decks. There's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them around here. See, I'm thinking of one. There's the Hardy parking deck. That's where the murder happened here recently. But there's that one that's kind of off of State and Park and Front, kind of in that block, right near the Paul Bunyan building where WTCM radio is. But that parking deck there is a paid parking deck. There's one on the west side now, I believe, but I don't remember where. There's a couple of surface lots across the river from downtown that you have to have a permit to park in. It's mainly for the workers down there, but you can also pay to park, when tourist season's on. And they still have a big farm market down there in this summer, which is kind of nice. They clear out one of the big parking lots, and it's a big farm market. And during Cherry Festival, that whole area is the midway, with all the carnival rides and games and food carts and Gibby fries. Oh my gosh, Gibby fries. That's actually a local thing. They travel around the country, going to fairs and festivals and whatnot, but it's a French fry cart. I don't know. It's like a big trailer. A bunch of it. I think they have multiples, but they are based right here in Traverse City, and they are always in Traverse City when there's any kind of festival going on, especially the Cherry Festival or the Northwest Michigan Fair. That's the two places I remember going. It's the first time I had fries with malt vinegar on them, and oh my gosh, every year at least once during Cherry Festival, I have to sneak down there through the crowds and get my Gibby's fries. But actually the carnival people that do the rides and stuff, that's based actually, well, not right in Traverse City, but in Acme, Arnold Amusements. And, if you're anywhere in Michigan at a place that puts up a carnival, well, that's usually Arnold Entertainment or Arnold Amusements, and they kind of nomadic carnies, but based right here. Let's see what else kind of gives it the small town feel. You go certain places. I don't know if this works this way in big cities, but in Traverse City at a certain time of the night, it's usually, I think, 10 o'clock, the traffic lights all go into blink mode, or at least a majority of them. Of course, now a lot of the traffic lights have been replaced with roundabouts or whatever you call them. And, that's a sort of a controversy. I kind of like them. As I talked about in the Iceland episode, the first time I ever saw one was in Reykjavik. Well, the second time I ever dealt with one was when they built the first one here, and now there's several. And so that's kind of a tick against being still a small town. One of the other things that's strange for a small town, we have right now 2 Meijer stores. Meijer's, as I think I mentioned in another episode, is a kind of a Walmart-sized grocery and other pretty much an everything store, but it's a kind of regional chain in the Midwest, mostly Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. I think they're into Kentucky and maybe Illinois, but they're not a national chain like Walmart, and they're no relation to the Fred Meyers out west, although they're very similar stores. I found that to be interesting when I was researching that. But there's going to be a third Meijer store in the area. And they got one, the main one, the first one was right along the US 31 highway and Silver Lake Road area, kind of by West Middle School. And that one's been around since the 70s. When I was talking about the 78 storm, that's where my uncle and I went in the Jeep to Meijer, to get the first supplies after the roads got cleared. But that Meijer's been there. It's been, torn down and rebuilt 2 or 3 times over the years, but it's still there. And, another side note, I saw the original Star Wars in the Meijer parking lot there. They had a twin theater, and that was a big thing back in the day. But we went to the original Star Wars at that theater that was in the Meijer parking lot there. But now that's gone, and that's where the Meijer gas station is, where the lady almost got abducted the other night. So kind of mixed memories. But the second one is out in Acme, Williamsburg to be exact, but they call it the Acme Meyers. But it's in Williamsburg. And what's kind of interesting to me, anyway, I know I'm weird, it's exactly the same distance for me to drive to the original Meijer store as it is for me to drive to the Acme store. And they're building a third one. They just built a big Amazon warehouse out there, too, at Chum's Corners. That's kind of I guess, a neighborhood, but it's south of Traverse City along the highways on the way south out of town or coming into town, depending on the direction of travel. But they're building another Meijer store out there, Chum's Corners. So we're going to have 3 Meijer stores. Now, we're a small town, at least I think it in my head. But there'll be a third one. And also, ironically, that one is exactly the same distance as the other 2 are from me. So I'm kind of in the middle between three Meijer stores. kind of strange, I guess. I guess maybe only I think that's interesting. But, hey, my show. Deal with it. But, it definitely seems smallish. I talked about the airport a lot. Again, the airport, one thing about going to the airport is I know most of the counter people at most of the airlines there. I know the TSA people. It takes me, 4 minutes to get through TSA there because it's not super busy. Now, we just had our record year of airline passengers, but it's still nothing compared to most even mid-sized towns' airports. So, and, one thing we don't have up here yet, and I guess I'm not too worried about us getting it, is train service. Amtrak doesn't come here. The closest Amtrak, I think, it's either Grand Rapids or Holland. And, I would utilize Amtrak if it was up here. When I go to Chicago, I do utilize Amtrak if I don't go to Manistee Airport and fly a little jumper down. But if I had the option of taking the train, I would. What I normally do when I have to go to Chicago for something in Chicago, I'll drive down to New Buffalo, Michigan, which is right in the far southwest corner of the Lower Peninsula. And they have an Amtrak station there. You get free parking. It's a small town. And then it's about an hour ride into Chicago, and you don't have to deal with parking your car and the traffic and all that stuff. So I've done that a few times going to Chicago, if I'm not flying through Chicago. But anyway, so yeah, I like to still think this is a small town. Again, maybe by definition it really isn't, but yeah, and another thing about Traverse City that a lot of people will notice is we're not super big on chain restaurants. We have our chain restaurants, of course. We've got a couple of McDonald's, but 2 McDonald's in the area went out of business. I've never even heard of that anywhere else. So I think we're down to, what is it? There's one on 31. There's one at Chum's Corners. There's one in downtown. There's one on Airport Road, and there's one in Acme. So there's 5 McDonald's, and at one time I think we had 7 or 8. I think it was 7 because there was one in the mall, and there was one in Greylakeville. But those went out of business. You just don't hear that. Same with Burger King. We've got 3, 4, maybe 5 Burger Kings, but the biggest one, the one that's been around the longest, just went out of business. We've had Arby's go out of business. We had, I think we at one time had 3 Arby's, and now we're down to 1. We have, I think, 3 Taco Bells. So, but like I said, there's no Five Guys. There's no, there's a lot of fast food that we don't get here, which is fine because we have some really awesome local places, even for burgers. We've got, Slabtown Burgers, I think is probably my favorite in town. There's also Bubba's downtown. There's one in Eastfield, that's another neighborhood, along 8th Street. There's one there called the Proper Burger. I forget what the Bergstrom's Burgers up by Chum's Corners. There's another, it's called Proper Burger. And I got to be completely honest with you, they suck, but that's between you, me, and the fence post. But hey, we got some local places. And same thing with like Ruby Tuesdays. Now, I don't know if they've had trouble nationwide, but ours went out of business. We had a Hooters. They went out of business. We do have a Chili's and a Applebee's. They're still going, but we have another restaurant in that same area where Chili's and Applebee's are that definitely isn't doing so good. It's Opa. It's a local place. I guess they're doing okay. They're still there, but they don't seem as busy as some of the others. We do have a Chick-fil-A. And that's a recent addition, and it was kind of funny when they first opened it. They had police out there directing traffic and all that. Now it's just, normal. But they have, they do have a Chick-fil-A here. I guess I could do a whole show about fast food. In fact, I used to do a whole show about fast food called Fast Food History. But I digress. But yeah, a lot of chain restaurants don't make it here or are not super popular here. We have a couple of local Mexican places. La Senorita is one, and I forget what the other one is. Again, they don't make big impressions on me. I'm not a super big Mexican food fan, but but it's still, like I said, I still get the small town feel. I don't feel at all concerned when I walk around a neighborhood here in Traverse City. The traffic does get a little ridiculous sometimes, but that's just being in a tourist town. Not so bad in the off season. I can still get all the way across town in 15 minutes, which, considering how many traffic lights and that there's only like 3 viable ways around Boardman Lake to get from east to west, that's not bad. Not too bad at all. So anyway, beating that dead horse enough. Hopefully you don't overeat on this Thanksgiving, or if you've already eaten and you're listening to this later, I hope you didn't overeat, but I hope you got your fill and got your camaraderie and everything else that goes along with the holiday. I'm just thankful that I can do a podcast every day here at NAPOD Pomo. Anyway, catch me tomorrow.